Verity Firth is the Pro-Vice Chancellor for Social Justice and Inclusion at UTS, and she's just come from the National Press Club, where she heard Education Minister Jason Clare talk about the 5 immediate priorities arising out of the first Accord report, and also the 70 ideas that are on its agenda for the end of the year. Professor Firth, what do you make of the first 5?
Well, the first 5 priorities will be very well received by equity practitioners in the university sector. They're responding to a number of the issues that we raised. I'm particularly pleased to see that regional university hubs are going to be getting some additional funding. I think he said in the realm of around 67 million in order to double the existing regional university hubs. And for those people who don't exactly know what these are, they are already in existence, and they set up in areas where there isn't ready university access, and essentially provide a study hub or base for students wanting to pursue a higher education while staying in their own communities. What they're particularly good at is actually supporting mature age students re-entering or entering for the first time university studies. So I visited a wonderful example in Broken Hill, where the majority of students were women returning after times in caring for children. They were men from the mines who were reskilling as the economy transitions, and a large number of Indigenous students. The hubs also provide wraparound academic support and administrative support to help students get through the bureaucratic processes of university enrolment. So I think they're a really good model. And what's interesting about what the minister's done is said he's going to build an extra 20 in regional areas, but 14 in peri-urban areas. And that's interesting because he's recognising the fact that for some of those high growth corridors, there is actually not been sufficient education service supply. It hasn't kept up with those high growth areas, and there is a problem with education delivery. So I think that's going to be very warmly welcomed by the sector. The abolition of the 50% pass rule, again, will be welcomed by equity practitioners. This was always something that we were concerned about, because all of the statistics tell you, and it's obvious that if you are a student who is either a first-in-family student, a student who's needing to hold down a job in order to attend or afford to attend university, if you're a student who has personal, family and caring responsibilities, particularly in your first year of university, it can be very, very challenging. Yes, it's up to universities to support these students to succeed, but having a punitive measure by which, if they fail 50% of their courses, they're essentially government support is withdrawn, was always punitive and was always going to have a big equity impact. The minister actually gave specific numbers around, just even at Western Sydney alone, over 1,000 students, I did write it down, over 1,350 students in just 1 year were forced out of university by this measure. So definitely the equity practitioners will be supportive of that as well. The minister also announced that they'll be creating demand-driven funding for Indigenous students in urban areas. Again, this was something that universities asked for and that equity practitioners asked for. At the moment, it applies to rural and regional Indigenous students, but of course it doesn't really make sense. What is the difference really between an Indigenous student living in Mount Druitt, as the minister said, and an Indigenous student living in Armidale? We actually want to encourage both those students to come to university, and demand-driven funding, as shown during that period of demand-driven funding in Australian higher education, does help with participation and access rates. And last but not least, well, there's 5, but the 4th that I'm probably most interested in is he talked about funding certainty in the 2 years ahead. So continuing that funding for universities as they sort all of this out, but particularly saying where there is an excess or where there is funding that the universities, that will be put into transition support for students from underrepresented backgrounds. Again, something that equity practitioners warmly welcome.
I know it's very early days. You haven't had a chance to look at the full report, but the whole idea of a lifelong learning entitlement, I mean, this takes us back to, it's classic Whitlamism.
Yes, and look, I'm very interested in that. I know nothing really about it yet because I've only heard him just announce it, but I've grabbed my copy of the Accord to go and dive into that to find out exactly what that entails. I'm assuming that universal learning entitlement hopefully we'll also be addressing some of the issues around integration between vet and higher education and how to make that more seamless. That's what I'm hoping's in there, but I need to have a look at it. The other thing that I'm looking forward to reading more about is the need-based funding model for Commonwealth support places. Now, this is really interesting because there was a call for the government to better recognise and to better reward universities who were doing the heavy lifting in inverted commas when it came to students from underrepresented backgrounds. These students often need extra support. The university is very happy to provide that extra support, but it does cost more. And being able to fund that appropriately and be rewarded for that, social good that's being delivered by that university. So again, looking at the detail of need-based funding model, and the detail of the National Skills Passport too, which I thought, again, something that both universities, higher, vet, everyone in schools have been calling for a long time, using some of the new digital technology that we now have to be able to create a passport that follows you through life, a lifetime of learning skills passport. I think this is all good and exciting stuff, but we need to dig into the detail of what that would look like.
I'll let you go and do just that.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank you very
for your
much,
time, Verity
Stephen.
Firth.
See
Bye-bye.
you.